The story begins in a quiet, picturesque suburban neighborhood where the seemingly perfect couple, Mark and Emily Carter, appeared to have it all. Their home, nestled on a tree lined street, was the epitome of suburban bliss. Mark, a successful financial consultant, was known for his charm and professionalism, while Emily, a former schoolteacher turned homemaker, was admired for her warmth and kindness. Together, they painted a picture of happiness, a couple deeply in love, raising two young children in a community that idolized them. To their friends and neighbors, the Carters embodied the ideal family. They hosted barbecues, attended church regularly, and were active in local charity events. Emily was often seen volunteering at the kids' school, while Mark's career seemed to provide them with financial stability and a lifestyle others envied. They were the kind of couple that others aspired to emulate, with Mark's charismatic personality and Emily's nurturing demeanor complementing each other perfectly. Yet, behind the closed doors of their pristine home, cracks in the facade began to form. Friends noticed subtle changes in their interactions, moments of tension during what should have been joyful gatherings, and a sense of distance creeping into their once unshakable bond. Emily's cheerful demeanor started to falter, and she occasionally seemed distracted, as though burdened by something she couldn't share. Mark, on the other hand, was spending longer hours at work. At first, Emily brushed it off as the demands of his career, but as the late nights became more frequent, she began to suspect that something was amiss. Friends later recalled seeing her attempt to maintain a brave face, but the sparkle in her eyes was dimming. Despite her efforts to keep up appearances, Emily's closest confidants sensed that something was troubling her. In the months leading up to Emily's disappearance, small but telling incidents began to unfold. Mark's behavior grew increasingly secretive. He was often glued to his phone, stepping out of the room to take calls, and becoming defensive when Emily questioned him. At one point, she confided in a friend that she felt like she was losing touch with her husband, though she stopped short of voicing her worst fears. Meanwhile, Mark's charm seemed to take on a darker undertone. His charismatic smile, once so endearing, now appeared calculated, as though masking a deeper truth. The couple's once regular date nights became rare, and their communication dwindled to logistical conversations about the kids and household responsibilities. Still, Emily held on to hope. She believed in the man she had married, the father of her children, and the life they had built together. She tried to rekindle their connection, suggesting weekend getaways or counseling, but Mark dismissed these ideas with excuses of being too busy or that things weren't as bad as she imagined. As their relationship unraveled behind closed doors, the Carters continued to present a united front to the outside world. Neighbors saw them as the perfect family, but Emily's growing unease hinted at a storm brewing just beneath the surface, one that would soon shatter the illusion of perfection forever. As the cracks in Mark and Emily's marriage deepened, Mark began to spend more time away from home. His explanations for late nights at the office or out-of-town business trips became increasingly vague, leaving Emily to manage their household and children alone. She grew suspicious, but Mark dismissed her concerns, accusing her of overthinking or being overly sensitive. For Emily, these denials only deepened her feelings of isolation. What Emily didn't know was that Mark had been leading a double life. His long hours at work weren't the result of career ambition, but of his growing involvement with another woman, a younger colleague named Vanessa Turner. Vanessa was strikingly beautiful, ambitious, and attentive, qualities that Mark found irresistible as his relationship with Emily faltered. What began as innocent flirtation in the office soon escalated into secret lunches, late-night texts, and ultimately an illicit affair. Vanessa, unaware of the full extent of Mark's domestic life, fell deeply for him. Mark, in turn, reveled in the attention and excitement that came with their clandestine relationship. For him, Vanessa represented an escape from the responsibilities and perceived mundanity of his life with Emily. He convinced himself that he deserved happiness, even if it came at the expense of his family. Mark's deception required careful planning. He juggled his roles as husband, father, and lover with alarming ease, ensuring that his secret life remained hidden from Emily. He created alibis, fabricated business meetings, and even enlisted colleagues to cover for him when necessary. However, maintaining such a web of lies wasn't without its challenges. Emily began to notice inconsistencies in Mark's stories. His explanations for his whereabouts didn't always add up, and there were times when he seemed unusually distant, even cold. One evening, Emily found an unfamiliar receipt in Mark's jacket pocket. Dinner for two at an upscale restaurant she had never visited. When she confronted him, Mark brushed it off as a client meeting and accused her of being paranoid. Still, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She started to piece together small details, unexplained absences, lingering glances at his phone, and a growing emotional chasm between them. While she couldn't yet prove that Mark was having an affair, her intuition told her that he was hiding something significant. Meanwhile, Mark's affair with Vanessa intensified. Their stolen moments together became more frequent and passionate, and Mark began to imagine a future where he could be free of the constraints of his marriage. Vanessa, unaware of the turmoil brewing at Mark's home, started to press him for clarity about their relationship. She wanted more than stolen evenings and whispered promises. She wanted commitment. This mounting pressure pushed Mark further into a corner. He was desperate to maintain the illusion of control over his double life, but the reality was slipping through his fingers. The tension in his marriage and the demands of his affair were building to a breaking point, one that would set the stage for the devastating events to come. The morning Emily Carter vanished was unremarkable at first glance. She had seen her children off to school and exchanged a few brief words with neighbors who passed by on their morning walks. Emily was known for her routine, her days often filled with errands, volunteering, and time spent caring for her family. But by that afternoon, everything changed. When Emily failed to pick up her children from school, alarm bells started to ring. She was a devoted mother, and her absence was completely out of character. Calls to her phone went unanswered, and messages remained unread. Friends and family immediately began to worry. Mark, who claimed to be at work, appeared genuinely confused when the school contacted him. He assured them it must have been a misunderstanding and promised to sort it out. Hours passed, and Emily still didn't appear. Mark's initial calm began to give way to panic, or so it seemed. He called the police that evening, reporting his wife as missing. The community quickly rallied to support the Carter family. Neighbors organized search parties, and flyers with Emily's smiling face were posted on every telephone pole and storefront in town. However, from the beginning, there were oddities in Mark's behavior. While he outwardly displayed concern, those close to him noted moments when he seemed detached or overly composed. Some chalked it up to shock, while others quietly questioned whether there was more to his reaction. The police investigation began in earnest, with detectives focusing on Emily's last known activities. They found her car parked in a grocery store lot, her purse and phone still inside. Surveillance footage showed Emily entering the store earlier that morning, but there was no footage of her leaving. This chilling discovery raised more questions than answers. As the days stretched into weeks, suspicion began to creep in. Friends revealed to investigators that Emily had confided in them about her growing unease in her marriage. She had hinted at feeling distant from Mark and even voiced concerns that he might be hiding something from her. One friend mentioned Emily's fears about a possible affair, though Emily hadn't named anyone specific. Detectives turned their attention to Mark, who by this point had become the face of the search effort. His media appearances, pleading for Emily's safe return, were carefully composed, but inconsistencies in his statements began to surface. When questioned about his whereabouts on the day Emily disappeared, Mark's timeline didn't align with witness accounts or phone records. The investigation also uncovered details about Mark's relationship with Vanessa Turner. Phone records revealed dozens of calls and texts exchanged between them, even on the day of Emily's disappearance. Detectives grew increasingly suspicious that Mark's affair was somehow linked to Emily's vanishing. As public scrutiny of Mark intensified, the idyllic image of the Carter family crumbled. The community, once united in their support, became divided. Some still believed in Mark's innocence, while others couldn't ignore the mounting evidence that pointed to him. Emily's disappearance was no longer just a tragic mystery. It was now the center of a dark and tangled web of secrets. The investigation into Emily's disappearance gained momentum as detectives began to piece together the fragmented timeline of her last day. Her abandoned car, the surveillance footage, and the growing suspicions surrounding her husband Mark painted a picture of a life derailed by secrets. As the search for Emily intensified, the police turned their focus toward uncovering the truth behind Mark's increasingly dubious behavior. Mark's initial cooperation with law enforcement appeared genuine. He provided a detailed account of his movements on the day Emily vanished, claiming to have been at the office and in meetings for most of the day. However, his alibi quickly began to unravel under scrutiny. Coworkers reported that Mark had been unusually absent that morning, and his phone records placed him in locations that didn't match his claims. When detectives obtained a warrant to search the Carter home, they found troubling evidence. In the garage, luminol testing revealed traces of blood that had been hastily cleaned. Though the amount wasn't substantial, it raised alarm bells. Forensic analysis was ordered to determine if it matched Emily's DNA. Inside the house, detectives noted signs of recent tension: a broken lamp in the bedroom, scratches on the hardwood floor, and Emily's belongings untouched, as though she had planned to return. Mark's affair with Vanessa Turner came under intense scrutiny. Police subpoenaed text messages and emails between the two, uncovering a disturbing pattern of conversations. In the weeks leading up to Emily's disappearance, Vanessa had expressed frustration over being kept in the shadows. She wanted Mark to end his marriage and start a new life with her. Mark, in turn, had sent messages filled with vague promises, including one chilling text that read, "Soon, everything will be taken care of." Vanessa was brought in for questioning and appeared genuinely shocked when confronted with Emily's disappearance. She insisted she had no knowledge of Mark's involvement and maintained that she had only been pushing him to finalize a divorce. Her cooperation and lack of direct evidence against her allowed police to shift their focus back to Mark. As investigators dug deeper into Mark's finances, they discovered troubling irregularities. Large withdrawals had been made from his accounts in the weeks prior to Emily's disappearance, and one of the transactions was traced to the purchase of cleaning supplies and tools. Surveillance footage from a nearby hardware store captured Mark buying these items consistent with attempts to cover up a crime. The tipping point came when forensic results confirmed that the blood in the garage was indeed Emily's. Armed with this evidence, police obtained a warrant for Mark's arrest. His calm facade cracked as he was taken into custody, though he continued to proclaim his innocence. The community, once steadfast in its support for Mark, was now divided. While some still clung to the belief that Emily might be found alive, others grappled with the horrifying possibility that Mark had orchestrated her disappearance. As the case built against him, the question loomed: was this a crime of passion, or had Mark meticulously planned Emily's disappearance to pursue a new life? The arrest of Mark Carter sent shockwaves through the community. The man who had once been a beloved neighbor and devoted father now stood accused of a heinous crime. With evidence mounting against him, the case quickly became a media spectacle, drawing national attention. The trial was poised to reveal the dark truths behind Emily's disappearance and the unraveling of a seemingly perfect life. As the trial began, prosecutors presented a compelling narrative that connected Mark's affair, financial irregularities, and the forensic evidence found in the Carter home. They argued that Mark had meticulously planned Emily's disappearance to rid himself of the constraints of his marriage and pursue a life with Vanessa Turner. They highlighted the timeline of events, emphasizing the chilling text message Mark had sent Vanessa: "Soon, everything will be taken care of." The prosecution unveiled a series of damning revelations. A forensic expert testified that the blood found in the garage was consistent with Emily's DNA and showed signs of an attempt to clean the scene. Surveillance footage showed Mark purchasing tools and cleaning supplies shortly before Emily's disappearance. The jury listened intently as these pieces of evidence painted a grim picture of premeditation. Vanessa Turner was called to the stand, and her testimony was a pivotal moment in the trial. While she maintained that she had no direct involvement in Emily's disappearance, her candid recounting of their affair and Mark's promises revealed his growing desperation. Vanessa admitted she had pressured Mark to leave his wife, but expressed shock and horror at the notion that he might have resorted to violence. Her emotional testimony provided insight into the psychological strain Mark was under, but did little to absolve him in the eyes of the jury. Mark's defense team attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that Emily's disappearance could have been the result of an abduction or voluntary escape. They painted Mark as a man struggling in a failing marriage, not a calculating criminal. However, their efforts were repeatedly undermined by the overwhelming forensic and circumstantial evidence. The trial reached its climax when the prosecution presented a chilling piece of evidence: Emily's diary. Found hidden in the family home, it contained entries detailing her growing fear of Mark. In one of the final entries, she wrote, "I feel like I'm living with a stranger. If anything ever happens to me, please know I tried to protect myself and the kids." This haunting message became a turning point in the trial, solidifying the jury's perception of Mark as a man capable of harming his wife. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Mark's composed demeanor shattered as the sentence was read, marking the end of a months-long journey to uncover the truth. Emily's disappearance, though solved in the eyes of the law, left lingering questions. Her body was never recovered, leaving her family to grapple with the painful reality of not having closure. The community, forever scarred by the tragedy, struggled to reconcile the idyllic image of the Carters with the grim truth that had been revealed.